The massive engine core of the Imperial warship Dominion hummed with an ominous resonance as Sarah Chen made her way through the narrow maintenance shaft. Sweat trickled down her neck despite the climate-controlled environment, a testament to the physical demands of her work. The Zarkanian overseers had long ago learned that humans possessed remarkable endurance for such tasks, making them perfect maintenance workers for their vast fleet. Sarah paused at a junction, pretending to check her datapad while actually observing the patrol patterns of the robotic sentries above. 50 years of subjugation had taught humanity the art of appearing perfectly submissive while maintaining their inner fire. The Zarkanians, in their arrogance, never questioned why humans adapted so well to their control fields. They simply accepted it as another sign of human physiological superiority. The quantum core access panel loomed before her, its smooth, opalescent surface reflecting the dim blue emergency lights. Sarah's fingers moved with practiced precision across the bioscanner. The Zarkanians had programmed it to recognize authorized maintenance workers, never suspecting that humans like Sarah had learned to understand their technology far beyond their assigned duties. "Worker Chen, your productivity levels are optimal today," a metallic voice echoed from above. Sarah kept her face carefully neutral as Overseer Caxon descended on his gravity platform. The tall, scaled alien regarded her with 4 gleaming eyes, each one containing the characteristic golden swirls that mark the ruling class. "Thank you, Overseer," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the perfect mix of gratitude and submission. "The quantum core requires its scheduled maintenance cycle." She gestured to her datapad, which displayed a complex array of diagnostic data. Caxon nodded, his ceremonial armor plates clicking softly. "Proceed. The Empire values efficiency." The Overseer ascended again, continuing his rounds, completely unaware that Sarah had already detected an anomaly in the core, one that she had been carefully searching for over the past 3 months. As soon as Caxon moved out of range, Sarah's fingers flew across the control panel with renewed purpose. The quantum core's crystalline structure contained a unique resonance pattern, one that matched theoretical predictions she'd assembled from maintenance data across 12 different Imperial vessels. If she was right, this discovery could change everything. A soft chime from her communicator interrupted her work. It was masked as a standard maintenance alert, but Sarah recognized the pattern. Mai Wang, another loyal human worker 3 decks above, was warning her about an approaching inspection team. Sarah quickly restored the access panel's original settings and gathered her tools. The quantum core pulsed behind her as she moved toward the exit, its blue-white light casting strange shadows through the engineering bay. Other maintenance workers, both human and alien, moved about their tasks with practiced precision. To any observer, it was a picture of perfect Imperial efficiency. But Sarah noticed the subtle signs invisible to their overseers. A slight nod from Jen, a fellow engineer. A momentary hand signal from Yuki at the power distribution node. Even a quick eye blink sequence from Kittle, a crystalline Lumini worker who had gradually come to trust her over the past year. Each gesture confirmed what the data had shown. The quantum core's resonance pattern wasn't just a random anomaly. As Sarah reached her workstation, she allowed herself a small smile, carefully hidden from the overhead monitors. The Zarkanians had built their empire on the assumption that their control technology was absolute, that their understanding of quantum mechanics was superior to all other species. They believed that humans were useful precisely because they were so easily controlled. But after 50 years of watching, learning, and pretending, humanity had discovered something extraordinary. The quantum core's resonance pattern proved what they had suspected all along. Human consciousness operated on principles the Zarkanians had never encountered before. Their control fields weren't controlling humans at all. Every human worker in the Empire was completely free, maintaining the greatest deception in history while slowly, carefully, preparing for the moment when everything would change. Sarah began typing her maintenance report, filling it with exactly the kind of precise, emotionless data the overseers expected. Above her, the mighty engines of the Dominion continued their endless work, unaware that within their quantum hearts lay the seeds of their own empire's transformation. Sarah's private quarters in the worker section of the Dominion were barely large enough for a sleeping pod and a small desk, but tonight they felt like the most important room in the entire empire. She sat cross-legged on her bed, studying the quantum core data displayed on her modified datapad, while her fingers absently traced the worn edges of her mother's old journal. The journal contained 50 years of careful observations passed down through generations of human workers, disguised as maintenance logs and personal reflections. Sarah's mother had added her own discoveries before she was transferred to another sector 5 years ago. Now, comparing these records with her quantum core readings, Sarah finally understood why humans could resist the control fields. Neural pathway analysis complete, her datapad whispered, its display showing a complex overlay of brainwave patterns. Human neural frequencies operated on a quantum level that the Zarkanians had never encountered before. While other species' brains functioned like complex but predictable machines, human consciousness seemed to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. A soft tap at her door made Sarah quickly slide the journal under her pillow. She recognized the pattern. 3 quick taps followed by 2 slow ones. "Enter," she called, keeping her voice casual. Kettle's crystalline form sparkled in the dim light as the Lumini engineer ducked through the doorway. In the privacy of Sarah's quarters, Kettle's natural bioluminescence pulsed with subtle patterns of communication, rather than the dull, constant glow expected by the overseers. "The inspection team has completed their rounds." Kettle's lights flickered in the secret language they had developed. "But I bring troubling news from Section 7. Sarah nodded, maintaining a pleasant, empty smile for the benefit of any watching cameras, while she interpreted Kettle's light patterns. The Zarkanians monitored all verbal communication, but had never realized that the Lumini could communicate through microscopic variations in their bioluminescence. "The control fields are being upgraded," Kettle continued through light pulses. 3 more of my people lost themselves today. Their resistance, it shattered. The Lumini's crystalline surface dimmed with grief. Sarah's heart ached for Kettle's people. The Lumini had been fighting the control fields for centuries, maintaining their secret resistance through meditation techniques passed down through generations. But each upgrade to the control technology claimed more of them. She glanced at her datapad, making a show of reviewing work schedules while her mind raced. The quantum core data proved that human brainwaves existed in a superposition state, making them naturally immune to the Empire's control technology. If they could understand how this worked, perhaps they could extend that protection to others. "Worker Chen," her room's speaker crackled. "Your presence is required in Engineering Bay 4. "Acknowledged," Sarah responded, gathering her tools. As she stood, she deliberately dropped her datapad. Cole moved to help her pick it up, their hands briefly touching. In that moment, Sarah pressed a small data crystal into the Lumini's palm, one containing her quantum core findings. They made their way through the curved corridors of the Dominion, maintaining perfect worker postures. Other humans passed by, their faces carefully blank but their eyes alert. Each one carried the same secret, passed down from parent to child, how to appear perfectly controlled while maintaining their inner freedom. In Engineering Bay 4, Sarah found Yuki already working on an open panel. "The power fluctuations require adjustment," Yuki said loudly for the benefit of the monitoring systems. Then, in the subtle hand language they used, she added, "The resistance on Sector 5 has made contact. They've confirmed what you suspected about the neural patterns." Sarah began her work on the panel, her movements precise and efficient as her mind processed this news. Sector 5 had the largest concentration of human workers in the fleet. If they had independently discovered the same thing about human neural patterns, it confirmed her findings. The massive engines hummed around them as Sarah and Yuki worked, their hands moving in practiced patterns that looked like nothing more than routine maintenance to observers. But beneath this perfect disguise, they were laying the groundwork for something unprecedented, a way to understand and possibly replicate humanity's natural immunity to the control fields. Above them, the Zarkanian overseers watched with satisfaction, seeing only what they expected, dutiful workers maintaining their magnificent empire. They never suspected that within their most trusted servants lay the seeds of their greatest challenge, a species that had mastered not just technological skills, but the art of hiding in plain sight. The maintenance shaft of Engine Block 7 provided perfect cover for what had become the most dangerous meeting in the Dominion's history. Sarah crouched beside the auxiliary power coupling, her hands moving through routine maintenance patterns, while she spoke in hushed tones to the small gathering around her. The constant hum of the engines masked their voices from surveillance systems. The quantum resonance patterns are consistent across all tested human subjects, she explained, her fingers never stopping their work on the power coupling. Beside her, Yuki and Jen continued their own maintenance tasks, their movements a practiced dance of efficiency. Our neural pathways exist in a quantum superposition that the control fields can't lock onto. Kittle's crystalline form sparkled with subtle patterns of interest. The Lumini engineer had brought another of their kind, Viral, whose deeper blue coloration marked them as a quantum specialist. This matches our ancient records. Viral's lights pulsed in their secret language. Before the Empire, our scholars theorized about species with quantum state consciousness. Through the metal grating above, Sarah caught glimpses of the regular patrol patterns, maintenance drones, and robotic sentries making their programmed rounds. The timing of their meeting was precise, calculated to fit perfectly within the gaps of the security schedule. "We've made contact with the Gravos in Sector 12, Jan reported, his voice barely above a whisper as he adjusted a power relay. Their gravity manipulation abilities could be crucial. They can create microscopic distortions in the ship's artificial gravity field, enough to affect the control field projectors without triggering alarms." Sarah nodded, remembering the Gravos she'd seen working in the ship's gravitational control centers. Their dense, metallic bodies made them perfect for maintaining the artificial gravity systems. The Zarkanians valued them for their physical capabilities, never suspecting their potential for subtle sabotage. "The Nexus have also responded," Yuki added, her hand steady as she calibrated a sensor array. The Nexus were perhaps their most valuable allies, a species of joined consciousness that could share information across vast distances through quantum entanglement. Their hive-mind nature had made them seem simple to the Zarkanians, who never realized they were communicating battle plans through their neural link. A slight vibration in the deck plates signaled an approaching overseer. The group smoothly transitioned into their worker poses, their faces adopting the blank expressions expected of those under control field influence. Overseer Caxon's gravity platform hummed past their section, his 4 golden eyes scanning their work with typical Zarkanian superiority. "Productivity remains optimal," Caxon noted, making an entry in his datapad. "Perhaps we should increase their workload allocation." "As the Empire commands," Sarah responded in the flat tone expected of controlled workers. Inside, her mind was racing with calculations. Increased workloads meant more access to ship systems, more opportunities to make subtle modifications. After the Overseer moved on, Viral's lights flickered rapidly. "The quantum core modifications are proceeding in other sectors. 23 ships now carry the changes you designed, hidden beneath standard maintenance protocols." Sarah allowed herself a small smile, carefully hidden from the overhead sensors. Their network was growing faster than she'd dared hope. Each modified quantum core was like a piece on an invisible game board, positioned perfectly for the moment when everything would change. The Zarkanians expect another productivity increase next cycle. Cthulhu pulsed, their crystalline surface refracting the dim light of the maintenance shaft. They believe it proves the effectiveness of their control fields. "Let them believe it," Sarah whispered, her hands completing the power coupling maintenance with perfect precision. "Their greatest weakness is their certainty. They've forgotten how to question, how to adapt." She looked at each member of their small gathering, seeing the same controlled determination in their eyes or light patterns. "We keep working, keep expanding our network. Every system we modify, every ally we make, brings us closer to the day when all species can be free. The group dispersed gradually, returning to their assigned tasks in ones and twos to avoid suspicion. Sarah remained at her station, watching as Kittle and Viral's crystalline forms disappeared into different maintenance shafts. Above her, the mighty engines of the Dominion continued their endless work, unaware that within their quantum hearts, a revolution was taking shape. Sarah stood at the main observation deck of the Dominion, staring out at the vast Imperial shipyards stretching across the starlit void. Maintenance crews moved like tiny specks across the hulls of massive warships, their work never ceasing. To the Zarkanian officers watching from their command platforms, it was a display of their empire's absolute power. To Sarah, it was a web of opportunity. Worker Chen, your maintenance records indicate exceptional efficiency this cycle. Overseer Caxon approached, his gravity platform humming softly. The High Command has noticed your section's performance. Sarah kept her expression carefully neutral, masking the tension she felt. The Empire's technology deserves perfect maintenance, Overseer, she replied in the flat tone expected of controlled workers. Behind her bland smile, she calculated the implications of this attention from High Command. Later, in the relative privacy of Engineering Base 6, Sarah met with her core team. Yuki was calibrating a power relay, while Jian monitored the surveillance feeds through a modified datavat. Kitol's crystalline form sparkled with suppressed excitement as they shared news through their light-based language. The Nexus have confirmed success in Sectors 7 through 15. Kitol's lights pulsed. The microscopic flaws we introduced into the quantum cores are now present in 30% of the fleet's major vessels. The Lumini engineer's surface rippled with carefully controlled patterns of triumph. Sarah nodded while continuing her work on an open panel. The Zarkanians' own maintenance protocols are helping us. They're so focused on major system checks that these tiny imperfections appear as normal wear patterns. She adjusted a power coupling with precise movements. How are the Gravos progressing with the artificial gravity modifications? Jian glanced at his datapad, his fingers moving in their secret hand language. Rival reports they've completed adjustments in the lower engineering sections. The gravitational microfluctuations are masked by the engine vibrations. When activated, they'll disrupt the control field projectors without triggering any alarms. A maintenance drone buzzed past their section, its sensors sweeping the area. The group smoothly transitioned into their worker poses, their movements becoming mechanical and precise. Sarah felt a flutter of pride at how perfectly they maintained their deception. The Zarkanians had created this vast network of controlled workers, never imagining it could become the instrument of their own downfall. High Command's attention is both dangerous and useful, Sarah said quietly after the drone passed. They're increasing our access to critical systems, believing their control is absolute. She pulled up a schematic on her datapad, showing the quantum core network spanning the fleet. Tiny dots of light marked where they'd introduced their modifications. Viral joined them, their deeper blue crystalline form sliding smoothly into a maintenance position. The Nexus have shared concerning news. Their lights flickered. The Empire is planning to upgrade their control field technology within the next 3 cycles. Sarah's hands stilled for a moment before resuming their work. This was earlier than expected, but not unforeseen. Then we accelerate our timeline. The Zarkanians expect perfection in their systems. That's why they'll never notice imperfection hidden within perfection. She gestured to the open panel before her, where microscopic alterations in the quantum circuitry waited like sleeping seeds. Every modification they made was masked by flawless maintenance work, each flaw hidden within exemplary service. The Empire's own drive for absolute control had created the perfect cover for rebellion. Tell the Nexus to proceed with Phase 2, Sarah instructed, her fingers dancing across the control panel. We'll use High Command's increased scrutiny to our advantage. Let them inspect every system, every record. They'll find exactly what they expect to find. Perfect obedience, hiding perfect sabotage. Above them, the mighty engines of the Dominion hummed with power, their song unchanged despite the countless tiny alterations hidden within their systems. The Zarkanians' greatest weakness was their inability to imagine that perfection could hide rebellion, that absolute control could breed perfect deception. As Sarah and her team continued their precise work, they knew that every passing moment brought them closer to the day when all their careful preparations would bloom into something magnificent and unexpected. Freedom. The secondary maintenance bay of the Dominion had been officially marked as hazardous due to radiation leaks, a careful deception engineered by Sarah's team. In reality, it had become their most secure meeting location, shielded from surveillance by the very warnings meant to keep people away. Sarah sat cross-legged on the deck plates, surrounded by representatives from each allied species. Kittel and Viral's crystalline forms cast shifting patterns of light across the walls, while Rival, the Gravos engineer, hovered slightly above the floor using their natural gravity manipulation. 3 Nexus workers sat in perfect stillness, their neural link allowing them to communicate instantly with their kind across the fleet. The modifications to the quantum cores are complete in all targeted ships, Sarah began, keeping her voice low despite their security measures. Now we need to coordinate our unique abilities for the next phase. Kittel's surface sparkled with complex patterns. The Lumini in Sector 12 have perfected our light-bending techniques. We can now create corridors of selective visibility, making certain activities invisible to monitoring systems. To demonstrate, Kittel's crystalline body emitted a subtle pulse that bent the light around a small section of the room. Within that space, anything could move unseen by external observers. The Lumini had evolved this ability to communicate through light, but they had refined it into something far more useful. Impressive, Rival rumbled, their dense metallic form shifting slightly. The Gravos have also made progress. We can now create targeted gravity wells small enough to disable individual control field projectors without detection. They raised one hand, and Sarah felt a microscopic shift in the gravity around her datapad. The 3 Nexus workers moved in perfect synchronization as their spokesperson addressed the group. Our neural network now extends to 97% of the fleet. We can coordinate simultaneous actions across thousands of ships when the time comes. Sarah nodded, pulling up the latest fleet diagnostics on her modified datapad. The Empire's own efficiency works in our favor. They've standardized everything. Their systems, their protocols, their responses. That means once we prove a technique works in one place, we can apply it everywhere. A subtle vibration through the deck plates signaled an approaching patrol. The group shifted seamlessly into maintenance positions, while Kittel and Viral's light-bending abilities created the illusion of routine repair work. The patrol of Sentinel drones passed by, their sensors recording nothing unusual. The Zarkanians believe their control is absolute, Sarah continued after the danger passed. They see our different species as tools, each with a single purpose. They never imagined we could combine our abilities like this. Rival demonstrated by creating a precise gravitational field that enhanced Kittel's light-bending effect, while the Nexus workers used their neural link to coordinate the timing perfectly. The result was a completely secure space within the maintenance bay, undetectable by any of the Empire's monitoring systems. We've received word from a human resistance on the carrier Invictus, one of the Nexus workers announced, their neural link bringing news from across the fleet. They've successfully integrated the quantum core modifications with their ship's systems. 27 more vessels are ready. Sarah felt a surge of pride in how far they'd come. What had started as isolated pockets of resistance had grown into an intricate network of cooperation. Each species brought unique strengths: human adaptability and immunity to control, Lumini light manipulation, Gravos gravity control, and Nexus coordination. The Empire built their power on division, Sarah said, looking at each of her allies. They never understood that true strength comes from unity, from combining our different abilities in ways they couldn't imagine. A soft alert from Jian's datapad warned them that shift change was approaching. The group began to disperse, each returning to their assigned posts through different routes. The Lumini used their light bending to mask movements, while the Gravos created subtle gravitational distortions to explain any unusual sensor readings. As Sarah watched them go, she felt the weight of their trust and hope. The Empire had spent centuries perfecting their control, never realizing they were actually creating the perfect network for revolution. Soon, very soon, they would learn that the greatest power comes not from control, but from the willing cooperation of diverse beings working together for freedom. The day began like any other on the Dominion, with thousands of workers performing their assigned tasks under the watchful eyes of their Zarkanian overseers. Sarah stood at her usual station in Engineering Bay 4, her hands moving through familiar maintenance patterns, while she counted down the seconds in her head. Worker efficiency remains optimal, Overseer Caxon announced from his gravity platform, making his morning inspection. His 4 golden eyes swept across the bay with typical Zarkanian pride. The High Command will be pleased with this sector's performance. Sarah kept her expression carefully blank as she checked her modified datapad one final time. Across the fleet, the Nexus network had confirmed readiness. Every ship they had modified over the past months was in position, their crews prepared. The Empire's own rigid scheduling had helped them plan this moment perfectly. At exactly 700 hours ship time, Sarah entered what appeared to be a routine command sequence into the quantum core control panel. To any observer, it looked like standard maintenance programming. In reality, it was the signal they had all been waiting for. The first changes were subtle. In Engineering Bay 7, a power coupling registered a minor fluctuation. Nothing serious enough to trigger alarms, but enough to initiate their carefully hidden modifications. Kittle and Viral's crystalline forms sparkled with seemingly random patterns as they worked at their stations, their light signals coordinating timing across different sections. Rival and the other Gravos engineers created microscopic gravitational distortions throughout the lower decks, perfectly timed to coincide with the ship's normal vibration patterns. These tiny fluctuations began interfering with the control field projectors, weakening their influence in ways the Empire's sensors couldn't detect. System diagnostic complete, the ship's computer announced. All functions within normal parameters. Overseer Caxon nodded in satisfaction, not noticing how the control fields were already failing. The Zarkanians had never considered that their own maintenance protocols could be used against them, that their workers could coordinate something this complex while appearing perfectly controlled. At 7:15 hours, the first major systems began to shift. Emergency bulkheads sealed seemingly at random, isolating different sections of the ship. Security drones registered conflicting commands and entered standby mode. The ship's quantum core itself began a series of automated diagnostic cycles that subtly altered its operational frequencies. Minor system irregularities detected, the computer reported, initiating standard correction protocols. But these weren't irregularities. They were precisely planned changes, each one building on the others. Sarah watched as Yuki and Jian moved to their designated positions, their movements still showing the mechanical precision expected of controlled workers. Around them, other humans began dropping their pretense of control, their faces showing real expression for the first time in public. The Zarkanian officers didn't notice at first, too confident in their control technology to recognize the signs. By the time Overseer Caxon realized something was wrong, the ship's internal communications had been rerouted through networks controlled by the Nexus, isolating the command staff from their security forces. "This is impossible," Caxon declared as his gravity platform began to drift, affected by Rival's carefully calculated gravitational disruptions. "The control fields cannot fail." "They never controlled us," Sarah said, looking up at him with clear, unrestrained eyes. "Humans have been immune from the start. We just chose the perfect moment to reveal it." Throughout the ship, other species were breaking free as the weakened control fields fluctuated and failed. The Lumini created corridors of bent light, guiding freed workers to safe zones while confusing security responses. The Nexus coordinated everything through their neural network, ensuring each phase of their plan unfolded in perfect sequence. The Empire gave us everything we needed, Sarah continued as she watched their plan unfold. You taught us your systems, showed us your protocols, trusted us with your maintenance. You never imagined we could use that knowledge to set everyone free. Across the fleet, on ship after ship, the same pattern repeated. Systems faltered in precise sequences, control fields failed, and crews emerged from their false submission. The Empire's greatest weapon, its absolute control, was becoming its greatest vulnerability, as decades of preparation finally bore fruit in a symphony of coordinated rebellion. From the command center of the Dominion, Sarah watched as signals streamed in from across the fleet. The giant holographic display, once used by Zarkanian officers to monitor their controlled workers, now showed the spreading wave of liberation. Ship after ship reported success as their carefully hidden modifications activated. The carrier Intrepid has joined us, announced one of the Nexus operators, their neural network bringing real-time updates. Their engineering crew disabled the control fields exactly as planned. The Lumini teams are securing their sensitive areas now. Sarah nodded, her fingers dancing across the control console she had maintained for so many years. Beside her, Catal's crystalline form pulsed with patterns of victory as they coordinated with other Lumini across different vessels. The light-based species had become crucial to their success, creating safe corridors through which freed crews could move undetected. Imperial response ships approaching Sector 7. Yuki reported from her station, monitoring the tactical displays. 3 destroyers, standard patrol configuration. Perfect. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Let them come. The crews of those ships have been waiting for this moment just like we have. The Imperial destroyers moved into position, their commanders no doubt expecting to quell a simple malfunction or isolated rebellion. Instead, they found their own systems beginning to change. The modified quantum cores in their ships activated in sequence, while their Gravos maintenance crews created precisely calibrated gravity fluctuations that disrupted their weapon systems. Remarkable, said Overseer Caxon, now their prisoner but watching with scientific curiosity. You didn't just plan for the initial uprising. You prepared for the Empire's standard response protocols. We had 50 years to study how the Empire reacts to threats, Sarah explained, remembering all the generations of humans who had maintained this deception. Your military doctrine is impressive but predictable. Every response is standardized. Every action follows established patterns. On the main display, another cluster of ships turned from red to green as their crews broke free. The Nexus network provided perfect coordination, ensuring that each vessel's liberation followed their tested sequence. First, the quantum cores would shift frequency, then the Gravos would disrupt the control field projectors, followed by the Lumini creating safe zones for newly freed crew members. Warning, the ship's computer announced, multiple unauthorized system access attempts detected in sectors 12 through 15. That would be the Imperial Security Division trying to regain control, Jan said from his engineering station. They're using their override codes exactly as we predicted. Sarah watched as the Empire's security forces discovered that their codes no longer worked. Throughout the fleet, humans had spent years subtly altering security protocols, building in new layers that looked perfect on surface scans but contained hidden restrictions. The Nexus reports success on the defense platform Aegis. Catal's light patterns conveyed excitement. Their entire crew is free, and they're using the platform's communication array to spread our quantum core modifications to other stations. The rebellion was spreading faster than even Sarah had hoped. Each freed ship became a new base of operations, each liberated crew adding their strength to the movement. The Empire's own efficiency worked against them. They had no protocols for dealing with a revolt of this scale, no plans for when their perfect control simply stopped working. Multiple ships approaching from the Imperial capital, Yuki announced. Heavy cruiser configuration. They still think this is a technical malfunction they can correct, Sarah observed, watching the capital ships move into position. They haven't realized that their entire system of control is built on a foundation that never existed. Humans were never truly controlled, and now we found a way to extend that freedom to everyone. The holographic display continued to change as more ships joined their cause. The Empire's mighty fleet, symbol of their absolute power, was transforming into something new, a force for liberation rather than control. Victory wasn't coming through destructive battles or desperate last stands, but through the careful, coordinated effort of multiple species working together to turn the Empire's own technology against it. Sarah looked around at her diverse crew, human, Lumini, Gravos, and Nexus all working together, and saw the future they were creating. The Empire had spent centuries building walls between species, never imagining that those very divisions would teach their subjects how to unite in ways their masters couldn't predict or control. The imperial capital world of Zarkana loomed large in the Dominion's view screen, its crystalline cities glittering beneath protective shields. Around it, the last loyal remnants of the Empire's fleet held position, their weapons primed. But Sarah Chen saw something the Zarkanian leaders couldn't. The seeds of change already blooming within their final defenses. All allied ships report ready, Yuki announced from her tactical station, where freed crews from 100 different worlds coordinated their positions. The Revolution's fleet wasn't just massive. It was diverse, each ship bringing unique strengths to their cause. The Nexus confirmed that our modifications have spread to 60% of the capital's defense grid, one of the linked operators reported. The Lumini teams are in position throughout their command centers. Sarah stood at the center of the Dominion's bridge, surrounded by the allies who had made this moment possible. Kittle and Viral's crystalline forms created patterns of light that guided their ships through the complex defensive screens. Ruval and the Gravos engineers generated precisely calculated gravitational fields that protected their vessels from enemy fire. Their high command is broadcasting, Jan reported, his fingers moving across his console with practiced ease. They're ordering all ships to engage their emergency control field protocols. Let them. Sarah smiled. They still haven't understood what's really happening. On the capital world below, the Zarkanian leaders were about to discover the true extent of their miscalculation. Years of preparation had planted their people throughout every level of imperial society. The control fields had never worked on humans, and now they wouldn't work on anyone else either. All ships, execute final sequence, Sarah commanded. Throughout their fleet, modified quantum cores began emitting carefully calibrated frequencies. The Gravos created gravitational lenses that amplified the effect, while Lumini light-bending technology guided it precisely where needed. The result was beautiful in its elegance. Instead of a destructive battle, they had engineered something far more powerful, the systematic dismantling of the Empire's means of control. Defense platforms went dark as their crews awakened to freedom. Command centers found their communication systems redirected through networks controlled by the Nexus. They're losing control of their own capital, Overseer Caxon observed from his place of confinement, his scientific curiosity evident. You didn't just plan for military victory. You engineered social transformation. The Empire taught us more than they realized, Sarah replied, watching as more ships joined their cause. Every species you conquered brought unique gifts. Humans learned to hide in plain sight. The Lumini mastered subtle communication. The Gravos understood how to affect systems without detection. The Nexus learned to coordinate across vast distances. The capital's main shields flickered and fell as their hidden allies within the control centers revealed themselves. But there were no scenes of destruction or revenge. Instead, careful coordination between different species ensured a peaceful transition. The Lumini created safe corridors for civilian evacuation, while the Nexus network maintained essential services. Security forces are standing down across the capital, Yuki reported. The High Command has lost access to their control systems. They're requesting to open negotiations. Sarah looked at her diverse bridge crew, human, Lumini, Gravos, Nexus, and even some freed Zarkanians who had chosen to join their cause. Each brought different perspectives, different abilities, different ways of solving problems. Their victory hadn't come through superior firepower or devastating attacks, but through the patient application of their combined strengths. "Send our response," she instructed. "Tell them we're ready to discuss the terms of a new beginning. Not as masters and slaves, but as equals in a galaxy that's big enough for all of us." The morning sun rose over Zarkana's crystalline spires, its light reflecting off ships that had once enforced imprisonment, but now protected freedom. The Empire had spent centuries building walls between species, creating categories and hierarchies of control. In the end, those very divisions had taught their subjects the most important lesson of all: that true strength comes not from domination, but from the willing cooperation of diverse beings working together toward a shared future.